Welcome to Elite Broker, the podcast showcasing the leading players and stories of success from Australia's broking industry.
Hello and welcome back to Elite Broker. I'm your host for today, Annie Kane. And in this week, we're speaking to a broker about all things diversification. Today, we're joined by a powerhouse broker in the form of Matt Spears from Evoke Capital here in Sydney, who's been broking for about 6 years, but in the finance industry for the last 19. And he really understands both sides of a settlement desk. He's had experience spanning resi and commercial finance and really built a reputation as the man who solves problems that others might find too complex. He's the founder of Evoke Capital, a full-service brokerage here in Sydney that bridges the gap between home ownership and commercial ventures, and isn't just talking the talk, he's also walking the walk as a highly successful property investor in his own right. So in this episode of Elite Broker, we're picking his brain about how staying in your lane is a myth, why diversification is the ultimate key to long-term wealth and business resilience for brokers. Thanks for joining me, Matt. How are you going?
I'm good, Annie. Thank you. What an intro.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And hopefully we can get to dig down into some of the details of how you've actually done all of this over your career, because you've actually only been broking for about 6 years, but made such a huge sort of splash in the broking industry. Really successful brokerage now with Evoke Capital, but you have been in the finance industry for a bit longer. So before you became a broker, you were in banking. Can you walk me through your career progression? So like, why and how did you become a broker in the first place?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, 6 years in the industry, and it still only feels like we're just getting started. 6 years is kind of flown by. But prior to starting the brokerage, I worked at Westpac. So I spent 13 years there. And I was fortunate to get a really great grounding in banking, starting in the branch, starting as a teller, fresh out of school with no real direction on what I wanted to do. And then moved into business banking after about a year and a half and had some really great mentors, which, took me on the journey from, really being a transactional expert into credit analysis, all the way through to relationship management, running teams and finishing in strategy before working really hard to not be needed in the bank and taking that redundancy and starting Evoke Capital in January 2020.
Oh, what a time.
Yes.
So coming right into COVID, how did you find that like when you first started? Because obviously January 2020, we didn't yet have it. I think March 2020 was really like the sort of beginning of COVID lockdowns and things sort of going a bit awry. How did you manage that kind of interesting period?
Yeah, it was a baptism of fire for sure. Sort of fresh out of the bank, super psyched and energetic, ready to, hit the ground and, start building the business. And then, sort of a month or two in, just had COVID hit us and banks, really didn't know which way was up. I'm still learning, all the other banks' processes and policies and whatnot. So it was a really big impact. But in hindsight, it's probably the best thing that really could have happened. It built a lot of resilience in me. It really gave me no plan B either. So for me, stepping into business banking, getting some really great mentors and, going to uni while I was at the bank. So I eventually went to uni, did that at night, did that over 6 years part-time, which, was probably, tougher than it could have been if I was to sort of pull back and go to uni full time. But I'm really glad that I did that because it taught me a lot about time management. It taught me really about just being really ruthless with where I put my time. And I think a lot of those skills have given me a lot of tools that I still use today to be able to really, juggle the business owner hat and juggle the broker hat and ensure we're sort of building our team out to which we've got about 17 staff now.
Wow.
And still growing. So I think starting with the bank and moving into commercial bank where we're working with a lot of business owners, we're really looking to understand, what they're trying to achieve in their business, what are their property goals and how can we look to bring that to fruition through resi property, through commercial property, through asset finance. And I guess for me, having that skill set across, resi, commercial and asset, which is standard as a commercial banker, has just given me that foundation to really talk to those business owners and property investors that have those needs across, those products to really deliver on all those fronts and give them what they require.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously, lots of business banking experience there. And I assume when you kind of decided to go out on your own, you were like, I'm going to focus on business finance, or did you think I'm going to write everything and anything?
Look, I think like any broker starting, you just want to put some food on the table. You just want to be able to pay rent. And for me, I knew that my skill set was across resi and commercial, so it was something that I did want to do. But I didn't do any marketing probably up until about 12 months ago. So it was really relationships that I had at the bank. It was building partnerships and looking to really, unearth those networks to get that, referral business moving forward. So it was something that I probably found where my niches were probably about 18 to 24 months into my broking career. But for the first 12, 24 months, it was really about how can I look to generate this business to propel myself and the business forward.
Yeah, so you were writing pretty much everything.
Correct.
Why is it called Evoke? How did you arrive at the name?
Evoke. So I guess like many brokers, I had a lot of names that I was sort of working through. I didn't have ChatGPT at that time.
Yeah.
And Evoke to me, I guess, it's generally used with a positive experience to evoke an emotional response, and also evoke is to obtain something. So Evoke Capital kind of fit. So that's how we got there.
Can you remember what your first loan was that you settled as a broker?
Yeah, it was a $300,000 refinance. It settled in May 2020. So just because the banks, had... they were turned upside down with COVID.
Yeah.
That's when the commission came in. So I think I settled that probably in March or April.
Okay.
But circa $1,500 or whatever came in.
Yeah.
I remember that.
That would have been a relief. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice.
Pay some rent.
But it was a long time coming. So.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is also really interesting. I mean, even you said it was sort of a long time coming there, but if you started your brokerage in January and you settled your first loan in March, that's actually quite quick. For most brokers who are just starting out. I think a lot of new brokers, particularly coming new to industry, could be 6 months before they actually see any income coming in. So good for you.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
And looking at the kind of things that you were doing when you were first setting up, like you sort of mentioned about having business banking experience. When you decided to kind of launch your own brokerage, did you ever think, I'm going to join someone else's business, or did you know that you wanted to have your own business?
I thought about it. I did go out and look and see what was out there. But for me, I guess with the background that I had, I wanted to try my own thing. And I think, with COVID, it just sort of moved that plan B. I actually went and got a job offer from a bank prior to going to start the brokerage. So I guess that was a plan B of sorts. But I knew that I would regret not trying to go my own way. And if it wasn't to work out, I could go back to a bank or potentially look at another brokerage. But it was something that I was intentional in wanting to start the brand and build that out myself. And, fortunate to be here today doing what we're doing.
So one of the first steps, obviously, a lot of people have to think about when they're building their brokerage is not only like, what kind of brokerage do I want? What kind of broker and what kind of brokerage do I want to build? But also, who am I going to partner with to do that? So when it came to actually choosing an aggregator, did you have anyone in mind that you were going to go to? How did you actually end up deciding on who to go with?
Yeah, for me, at the time, I did go and talk to the aggregators at the time and the technology that was out there at the time. And for me, I looked to align it with SFG based on, their management, but also Sales Tracker, which I thought was the best tool at the time. We still use that today. So for me, in building the business, I wanted to have the flexibility to build it my way. I wanted to ensure that I could support, my clients and also my staff with, the best tech out there. So for me, I guess the partnership was very much about what's going to give the business the best foundation and allow us to grow and scale off the back of that.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing because, 6 years in and you're probably one of the biggest SFG brokers in the team, like not only in terms of size, but also in terms of like volume being written. I might be mistaken on that. So if you are an SFG broker and you're like, you know what, I write more than Matt, then let me know.
No, I think Chris Raymond got me last year. But
did he? There we go.
Lots of healthy competition, which is great. There's a lot of great guys that I'm really good friends with.
Yeah. Is that unconditional finance?
Yes. Yeah.
So looking at then, I guess, the team and how you built them, going from yourself, single operator in day one to now 17 people in the team, that's a huge growth pattern. How long did it take before you started building out the team?
So I think my first hire was probably about 9 months into business. And that was an offshore hire who's still with us today.
Yep.
And then probably it would have been 6 months after that. So it's probably, 14, 15 months in, I hired an onshore credit analyst, which for our business, given we're at the moment still about 35% commercial is our flow and then the rest is residential, that suited the needs of the business at the time because commercial, I guess it's more complex. It takes you, longer to write and there's more of a tender process there that you need to run with the bank that I needed that specialist skill to deleverage my time to better put it into the client strategy and engagement.
So you started with the kind of the back end support, I suppose. How long was it before you brought in your first broker to come join you?
So we actually only hired our first broker this year.
Oh, wow.
So we hired Dyson, who's come on board. He's doing a really great job. So we're already hiring him support because he's really delivering.
Yeah.
And that's our plan now, is really looking to, I guess, replicate, the systems and process that we've built to write what we've written in our time, and really educate and coach those brokers to really, be the best they can be.
Okay, so I'm sure the question that a lot of brokers listening to this will ask will be, well, if you've only got one new broker now, what is everyone else doing? Like, who are the other, 15 people in the team apart from you and Tyson who are doing the broking?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I guess to run you through our sort of team setup. So I guess that team, the 17 people, are Team Matt. So I guess myself, I'm really aligned now with marketing, partnerships and client strategy. That's, what I enjoy, and that's what I'm best at. So in terms of when we get introduced to a client, I'm having that initial strategy call.
Yeah.
So we're looking to understand, where are you today? What are you looking to achieve? How do you want to achieve it? Are your goals realistic? Are they maybe not as bullish as they need to be? And we set a plan. And from there, we want to get their information. So from that engagement, I then have my assistant, Shania, who works with me. She's my EA onshore. I've got Gavin, who's our head of credit and operations. I've got 2 onshore credit analysts that just work on our files. And I've got 4 offshore credit analysts that work within the team as well. And the rest of the team are broker support and marketing function as well.
Wow. So, you got a lot of help there behind you.
I do,
yeah.
Got a great team.
Do you did you kind of decide that was the team structure just based on capacity needs as you grew, or were you like, this is always going to be what my team's going to look like?
It's interesting because I've always spoken to a lot of brokers in the industry throughout the last 6 years. For me, I want to learn from somebody else's mistakes if I can, and really take that wisdom in from those that have forged a path. So I probably initially was hiring based on what I felt that I needed, and then I started to reach out and talk to those really successful brokers out there on what worked for them. And the thing is, every broker's business is so different. Because we're doing the commercial and the resi, we're going to have more of that onshore experience because of the complexity of those commercial deals. But I guess what I probably didn't fully value earlier in my journey was how amazing, an offshore team can be in terms of optimizing your back end. But it's ensuring that you set them up for success with the right systems and process for them to be able to plug in and really get up to speed really quick.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a mix.
We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I'd like to ask you about what that process is to get your offshore team up to speed quickly, and we'll get into that just after this message. So you mentioned there about having, a sort of strong process, and I'm always really curious to be like, well, what is your process? What does it look like? And how do you ensure that a team, both onshore and offshore, are able to do what they need to do smoothly and efficiently? For you, what sort of things did you put in place to make sure that your team was all working into the same unified goal?
For me, I guess where I feel that probably one of the strengths that I got from my corporate life was, understanding how the banks, operate, with 40,000 employees, and it is all systems and process. So it's really about understanding if there's a task to do, you need to map it out, into individual steps. You need to assign those individual steps to those who need to complete those steps. But it's also putting that into a learning environment that if you're going to hire and bring people in, you can plug those people in and they can learn your process without taking time out of your day.
Yeah.
So for us, when we were starting to get some momentum and really start to, build the deal flow and the settlements were coming in, we actually mapped out every single one of our process. And I think at the moment we're at about 140 steps in terms of initial lead engagement all the way through to post-settlement activities. And within, those steps, it's really broken down into different workflow stages, but then it's broken down to who's actually responsible for those tasks as well.
Yeah.
So by doing that and then actually doing videos on how to actually complete each of those steps and putting that into a central learning hub, when we have people come into our business, they can plug in and they can learn exactly what they need to do within about 2 days. So there's probably about 2 days worth of videos that they can watch. And once they watch that, they know our process from end to end. If they have any questions, instead of going to their team members, they can self-serve. So for me, I feel that once we started to grow, it was really about getting really granular with that process and working out who's going to be best fit to complete this. So we're making sure that each team member is doing what they should be, what's their highest and best use skill, and ensuring that they're being supported from the team where it makes sense.
I bet there's a lot of people thinking, God, that sounds like a lot of work, like having to do all those videos and actually, kind of put it together. But I guess, as you said there, pays off in the long run because you put in a little bit of time and you can save time then later when you do onboard people. How long do you reckon it took to actually make all of that?
Oh, we're still doing it. Like we're still adding to the process. We're changing things. Something goes wrong, and then we need to add something into the checklist. And I guess for me, if it's technology or a process, if we're adding something in, I want to find something that we can potentially take away, because we could just build it out to be 200, 300, 400 lines if you wanted to, but then that's not something that's really going to be followed to a T if it just becomes too onerous. So for me, it's about, okay, well, if we're going to add something in, what can we take away? What can we simplify? And that goes for systems as well. There's a new system now every week with AI and whatnot. Some are great, some are to be decided. But for me, it's about, okay, well, if we're going to add something in, what can we take away and what can we optimize so we can still just get on with the doing and get the job and the deals done.
Yeah. So when you were making all those videos and stuff, were you doing that through your CRM? Are you using another kind of workflow system? Where are you actually hosting all that?
So we've actually built an intranet on top of our CRM. So we use Notion as, I guess, the sandbox from which we look to build all of that out in. And really we treat it like a company intranet where you've got, we've got HR policies, we've got leave policies, we've got, review registers so we can sit down and look to review, the performance of the team every month. So they have an opportunity to talk about what's working, what's not working. So by building that environment, and again, we're adding to that all the time, in terms of the time it's taken, it's probably can't be quantified because we're tweaking it all the time. But in terms of the videos and whatnot for those processes, we're just using Loom, and we're getting somebody who's an expert at what they're doing to just record that process, talk to why they're doing it, and then we just save that video within the system. And it's if you were to sit down and teach your team members to do that, you're probably going to go through that process 3 or 4 times. But if you do it once, they have that video, they're not going to ask you that question again. So it's about removing that double handling from your learning process and then centralizing it as well.
It's a good idea. And you mentioned Loom there, which is the video capture, so you can see what you're doing on the computer or wherever you're working. And then you've also got Notion, which is sort of hosting your intranet. Is there any other tools or tech that you use day to day? You mentioned Sales Tracker earlier, which is obviously the SFG CRM. Recently, I think upgraded to 2.0, or at least is maybe in the process of that. How much do you use Sales Tracker? What do you like most about it? What do you think is the kind of the best bits about that technology?
Yeah, look, I think Sales Tracker we use for, I guess, our processing and our compliance. So it gives us everything we need. And in terms of the allocation of the tasks to the team, that works really well. I guess the reason we built Notion on top is just to give us that flexibility to be able to have that environment. And we want to have Notion and Sales Tracker talk to each other, which is something with 2.0 we're looking to build out as well. In addition to that, we use Go High Level for our marketing. The reason for that is we wanted a system that, again, is going to give us the flexibility to change and build things out and use different consultants to really make sure that we're taking our clients through the right journey. But in terms of the other systems, we use the Microsoft suite. We use Quickly, which is a great product, which everybody uses. But there's probably nothing out of the ordinary from what a lot of brokers are using. It's really Notion and, probably Sales Tracker as our core systems.
Yeah. And so when it comes to, the kind of new Sales Tracker, as it were, which, as I sort of said, it's been rolling out a little bit. What is it that you kind of are like, this is going to be super great, or conversely, I wish I did this?
Yeah, look, for me, when I look at a system, I look at, how is it simplifying, our process, and how is it making it easier for our team to do what they need to do. So for me, it's the task management to the individuals, which offers a lot of value. It's the reporting that we can build out by connecting Power BI and whatnot through open APIs. That's super important to me.
Yeah.
So it's just being able to, I guess, run the business that we need to, that's going to support us as we grow. And I've found that's what worked for us thus far.
And you mentioned as well about bringing in a new broker this year. So walk me through the decision to actually, did they approach you? Did you go out and find someone? Like, how did you kind of come to let me start again. How did you come to the decision that you needed a second pair of hands bringing in new business?
It was just getting to a point where I guess Team Matt was hitting capacity. So, for me, I really love what I do. I enjoy the conversations with clients. I get a lot of value myself personally out of, what we do as a team. But we were reaching capacity in terms of our settlement volumes and my meeting capacity, and we had that surplus lead flow. So for me, having an additional broker, this year was always a plan. Dyson actually chased us down. So he was hitting me up on LinkedIn and, hitting me up on Instagram. And I actually said to Gav, who's my head of credit and operations, Gav, can you talk to Dyson? He lives in Melbourne. We wanted somebody in Sydney because we see value in people face to face, really being able to learn not just how we process deals, but how we look to really work with investors to get the best outcome for them. Because we're very heavy on investors and business owners. That's the client avatars that we serve. Dyson lived in Melbourne. To his credit, he actually moved to Sydney to work with us. And we're running a PAYG model. And the reason for that is to ensure that we've got, some type of control over how the process runs, because we feel like what we've built works really well. We work with some amazing partners and clients. We want to ensure that they're receiving the same level of service. So running that model for us is what made sense.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about having a head of credit and operations. And I always think this is really interesting. And I think increasingly we're seeing brokerages bring in like a GM type figure to do the kind of the day-to-day operations, because it is a lot of work, particularly when you get to a big size team like you have. You're having to kind of do a lot of performance reviews. You're having to think a lot about what sort of tools and tech you're using, even things like, have we paid the subscription for this service, or, all that sort of minutiae of running a business. What did you kind of look for when you were hiring an operations manager?
So it was a hire that took me a while to get right. And I'm so lucky I've got Gav. Gav and I have known each other for, probably 5-6 years. We met playing golf through a bunch of banker mates, as banker mates do. But I really wanted somebody that had the same skill set as me from a resi and a commercial standpoint, who loved building and leading teams. And I guess that the mandate for Gav when he came into the business was, your job is to come in here and scale the business in terms of building out what Team Matt is doing from a volume perspective, but also building out our back-end support team, which is ultimately going to help our brokers scale, when the time comes. And he's done a phenomenal job. So I think when he came in 2 years ago, we were a team of 6 or 7. Now we're sitting at 17. We're about to hire 2 more people, to go to 19 probably next week. And if we hire an additional broker, which we're looking to do very shortly, it'll take us to 20 and beyond. So for me, it was ensuring that I could have somebody that I knew and I trusted from, I guess, a credit standpoint, but also an operational standpoint that can really lead our team and be that, I guess, central point for questions and whatnot. And while I'm still here, I want to make sure I'm focusing on, I guess, sales and marketing. That's what I'm really great at. And that they can ensure that from an operations standpoint, we're ticking over and doing the things that, keep the lights on.
Yeah. And so I guess this is, again, something where, because you're doing PYG model, you're kind of like, this is all that you're doing. You can take that off my plate. I don't have to worry about that anymore. So how do you actually structure the team? Who does what?
Sure. So I guess we've covered the onshore team, but in terms of the offshore team, I guess our broker support function we've put into specialist roles. So we've got our pre-app function where we're working with the clients to obtain their information and get those files, I guess, credit ready. Again, we want to make sure that our credit analysts are only jumping into files once everything is there and it's ready for them to rock and roll. So the pre-app function is really there to engage with the client post the initial strategy meeting to get all that information to be able to have that ready for the credit analyst to jump in and get to work. So we've got the AOL function where we're working through, okay, what do we need to do to submit the files? What do we need to do from an MIR standpoint? And that role is really about submitting and making sure we're getting great turnarounds and outcomes for clients post submission. We then have our document and settlement team. So that's where, again, once we get that conditional or unconditional approval, we're ensuring that those files are moving through to settlement, and we're engaging with their solicitors to make that experience as smooth as possible. And then we have our post-settlement team. So that's where we're looking at 1 month check-ins, 6 month check-ins, annual reviews, repricing, valuations, all the things that we do for our clients, just to make sure that post-settlement, they're still getting the care and the intention that they were getting when we're initially putting the application together. So
if you're a client and you kind of come to Evoke Capital and let's say you're their broker, you might have like 5 or 6 people in the process then sort of working on your file all the way through. Does that help when it comes to things like if someone's off on leave or if someone, can't kind of come in that day, like having other people in the team that know at least where in the process that file is?
It does. So we make sure that we have a file owner throughout the process. So it's generally the credit analyst that's going to be the central point of contact for the client. Myself and Gavin are the escalation points in need. The clients can always reach out to us as well. But our broker support function is there to support the analyst with that file ownership and delivering on that solution.
Yeah. You mentioned, though, about bringing in 2 new people this soon. Is that broker support for Dyson?
Yeah, correct. So this team Matt needs broker support.
Yeah.
We're looking to get broker support for Dyson as well. But we're also looking for another credit analyst to join Team Matt because we're looking to actually promote one of our credit analysts into a broker role.
Oh, exciting.
So yeah, the reason we're kind of doing that is because we just want people to plug into how we process these deals because it works. We get great client outcomes and great feedback. So then plugging into our environment to start is really important with that promotion into a PAYG broker, and they can look to move to contractors in time if they want to. So with all of our roles, we have progression. So I think it's really important that whether you're a broker support in our AOL function or you're in pre-app or post-app, that there's progression in your role, and we make sure we build that across the team.
So you mentioned a couple of times about, Team Matt getting to capacity. So what is capacity? And I think this is a question I'm asking because a lot of the time brokers will say to us, well, when should we bring in staff? At what point are we is it too early? Is it too late? I wonder for you, what is max capacity? What does that look like?
I think it depends on the type of business that you want to build. For me, I definitely hired support too late. If I was to have my time again, I would have definitely invested more in support, both onshore and offshore earlier. I would have been able to write a lot more sooner. But I think it's probably common for a lot of brokers when you start to get some success, you start to see some money coming in after having, not much. You're like, oh, this is great. I want to invest in property. Yeah, I want to, go on holidays. You want to do stuff, right? And I guess I was probably, guilty of that for a year. And then I sort of realized, no, hang on, if I want to keep this momentum going, because this game is just a momentum game, right? If you want to keep progressing, you really need to invest in your team and take tasks off you and really be buying back your time as a broker or a business owner. So for me, I think when I realized we were starting to hit capacity is when, Gav came in 2 years ago and we really started building out the team and we started to see those month-on-month settlements coming up. My view was okay, well, it's going to get to a point where when I can't service all of those client appointments every day, we're going to have to start bringing brokers in to cover that overflow. And that's where we're probably a little bit late to the party. We should have done that, earlier in this financial year, but we've got a great person now, Dyson, who's doing great, but he's getting to a point where he's oversubscribed. So that's where we're looking at, okay, well, we need to push, Sean, our great credit analyst, into a broking role. That was always the plan for him, and then look to backfill that role. So for me, I think it's about understanding what type of business you want to build. Do you want to be a broker or do you want to be a business owner? For me, I love the broking side as well. But I guess in terms of when to hire, for me, it was about when I started to get that surplus of clients that I couldn't service to the best of my ability.
How many loans do you reckon you write a year now or a month?
So we're probably doing, I would say 40.
A month.
40 a month. Yeah, thereabouts. No, not a year. So yeah, we're average deal size is about 1.5, but it's probably about 30. So we did about 43 million last month.
So almost more than one a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you working 5 days, 7 days, 6 days? How many days do you work?
Look, I'm working less now than what I was probably 2-3 years ago.
Because you have more team.
Correct. And again, it's about buying your time back, ensuring that, you're taking some work off yourself. But my standard days, I probably start work about 8. I finish at about 6. I'll probably do 3-4 hours on the weekend just to, I guess, clear any backlog and get set up for the next week.
Yep.
But, I was 7 days a week for a long time, weekends. But, in this business, until you have, I guess, the cash flow to hire, you've got to work hard.
Yeah. And I'm always curious as well, because especially here in New South Wales, for example, we have a huge auction market. A lot of people were like, oh, I am going to an auction on Saturday. I want to talk to my broker. And some brokers are like, I'm only working Monday to Friday. I'm not going to do that. Do you kind of are you available on Saturdays if people are going to go to auction or they have any questions? Or do you kind of wait and be like, I'll pick that up with you on Monday?
No, I will take calls and I will have those conversations. Again, I need to remind the team sometimes, it's a privilege for us to be busy and to have business. They can walk into a bank or they can go to another broker that, will service them. So if we have a client engaging with us, we need to be delivering from a customer experience perspective because we're providing a similar service and product to our peers. It's really, the individual and the service that you provide and the outcome, but, the service is really what's going to make or break that client experience, and it needs to be on point.
Yeah. And I think this is, again, something where I'm kind of interested to see that you've got a full service brokerage, that you offer both commercial and resi and asset. Did you kind of set out going I'm going to do that because I don't want to lose business elsewhere? Or were you kind of actually, I just want to be able to write everything because I think it's fun?
Look, I enjoy it, but it's also probably defensive in a way. I guess for me, I've got the skill set to have that conversation and at what I believe the best level to fully deliver on all of their needs across resi, commercial and asset. For me, I'd look at the services that we offer based on the client avatar that we serve. So for us, we serve business owners and we serve investors. And that cohort of people are going to have residential needs, they're going to have commercial needs, and they're going to have asset finance needs. So for me, I've got the team and the skill set to be able to deliver on that. And from a business perspective, that's going to have a better return on our time. It's going to have a longer lifetime value from a client perspective. And it's also going to have a lot more repeat business, which, again, they're the type of relationships and clients that we want to build. We're very much a relationship business. We're not a transactional business. We're fortunate that that recipe has resulted in much higher deal size because we're working with those that are running very successful businesses or are very successful in what they do at work, and they want to look to put that money to work via property or whatever it may be. So it was intentional once I sort of understood where we're really delivering and doing well. And I'm a big advocate of that for brokers in the industry, that while if you're starting, yes, you should probably specialize in doing one thing really well, but you shouldn't close yourself off from being able to deliver on those needs for your clients. Look at partnerships, look at other models where you can team up and still ensure that you're managing that relationship for the client and not getting potentially disintermediated by somebody else.
Yeah. You mentioned as well about, the kind of the two avatars that you're really focusing on, so investors and business owners. You yourself are a property investor, and you mentioned like in your first kind of year, you were maybe like looking more at doing that than you were at like building out the team. How many properties, if you don't mind me asking, do you own now?
Yeah, so 6, and we're about to exchange on a couple more at the moment.
Exciting.
So, yeah.
So you're one of the many, many investors that are out of market at the moment. Do you think that helps when you're having conversations with your investor clients, that you can kind of be like, this is how I've like done my own portfolio? Oh,
absolutely. For me, it's about, I guess, telling them what I've done well and what I probably haven't done well. I've made plenty of mistakes along the years, but, I've been an investor now for 13 years, and it's given me a lot of opportunity. It's given me the opportunity to look at businesses and, commercial properties that we're looking at now. So I really believe in it, and I feel like that holds a lot of weight when I'm talking to those type of clients who are interested in doing what we're doing.
Commercial property is interesting, but I'm assuming not for your own, as an investor, not as an owner-occupier.
Oh, so, purely investing, yeah.
So what kind of things are you looking at in the investor space?
Oh, look, for me, it's really about...
commercial space.
In the commercial space. So for me, it's really about balancing the return of the portfolio. So just like when I look at an investor's portfolio, we generally need to start with resi because it's got a lower barrier to entry. We've got higher LVRs, but it generally comes with a negative cash flow. Lucky if we're break even, if we're looking at dual locks and whatnot. But I guess for the sophisticated investor who is potentially earning a lot of income from their business or personally, or we've built a great resi portfolio, but we want to look to diversify and add some yield to the portfolio, commercial is a great asset type to really bring into the fold. So for me personally, it's about, I've built that foundational resi portfolio. How can I look to build the commercial and really have that yield that, I'll be able to unearth once I sell down some properties and bring out that yield from debt reduction.
Yeah.
And again, when I'm talking to clients about that stuff, they really respond to it because they're on that journey as well.
Yeah. Do you kind of have your own, does it help having your own personal experience of working with lenders for these sort of investment deals when you're writing the loans for your clients?
Oh, look, I think like most brokers, your own personal stuff goes on the back burner. So you probably don't look after yourself as much as you look after your clients. And I'm guilty of that. My rates probably aren't crash hot. And, there's probably some equity that I could definitely look to tap into when I get some time. But, look, it does because I'm aware of what's out there. And that's what got me interested in lending in the first place. It was being in business bank, working with these amazing business owners who had built, these amazing businesses, but had also built amazing portfolios. And I spoke about this on a recent podcast where what really got me interested was I was talking to a client of mine. He was about 50, had a waste management company, was making circa $5 million a year from that company. It's a great money. But he had, I think it was about 50 properties. And we would sit down every quarter and run through his results and talk about, how everything's going. And I just said to him, I said, Harry, how did this happen? And he goes, look, I've made great money out of business and whatnot, but I've made more out of property. So he goes, you're 21. If I were you, I'd be putting all your money into property. And that for me was probably, one of the catalysts that really made me think about, okay, I need to start investing for my future and really go hard and deep into the property investment space.
Wow. And do you invest everywhere or just in New South Wales?
Oh no, I got property all up the East Coast.
Yeah.
So, mainly sort of Queensland and New South Wales. But, looking at pockets in Victoria as well. For me, East Coast is kind of where I feel is the value for the assets that I'm looking to buy.
Yeah, interesting. And you kind of mentioned there as well about, having the kind of the business clients as well. And I'm always curious to see like how people actually go and find business clients as leads, because unless you're kind of like maybe in that world, it can be quite difficult to know when someone is a business owner unless you're like talking to them about their business. Like if they're a coffee shop owner, you're just buying coffee from them, for example. I assume for you probably had quite a lot of leads coming from the bank when you were working there. Is there any other ways that you though generate new business when it comes to business finance?
Look, a lot of people think that. I didn't get as many deals out of the bank as people would think. I reckon I probably landed 6, 7.
Okay.
So not heaps, because I was in a strategy role for 2 years. So I was off the tools as a banker for a period. But I think what a lot of people probably don't think about is your clients, PAYG clients, have an accountant, and they probably have a financial planner. And if you're building a strategy for them, you potentially want to engage them to ensure that whatever you're doing from a lending standpoint is going to align from a tax standpoint, or is going to align from a transition to retirement strategy, or whatever it may be. And you want to use those opportunities when you're talking to your clients and talking to their advisors to really flex your skill set. Say, this is what we're doing, but we wanted to check with you, does this align? Does this make sense? And they're going to appreciate that because it's going to make their job easier. And it's also going to build some, authority and credibility for them and what they're doing and the value that they add to their clients. So if you can approach, the way in which you put your solutions together collaboratively, you're going to build those relationships with those individuals as well. So every client that you're working on, there's potential, referral opportunities that you can tap into there. And also when you do a really good job, don't be afraid to ask for a referral as well. But ask for a number of referrals. Like I tell the guys, we want to ask for 2 referrals from each client. We don't want to just ask them to send their family and friends because they're going to say, yeah, no worries, and hang up and forget about it.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, really love working with you, the biggest compliment we can get is, a referral to a family or friend. Is there 2 people that you can think of that, may benefit from what we're doing for you at the moment? And just pause, just wait and see what they have to say. And if they introduce you to 2 more people, that's 2 leads that you wouldn't have gotten. So I think you need to be looking at the conversations that you're having and the opportunities that you could potentially capitalize on to build your business and, keep doing the great impact you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So it's really just kind of asking your existing clients for referrals, which has really helped you build your book.
Oh, look, that was huge to start with. So if I look at FY25, 80% of our business was organic. It was either existing client or client referral. So we have a huge amount of client referrals in our business, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
But, partnerships are great as well. We've got some great partnerships that, have really propelled us forward, in recent years. And I think you need a balance. For me, I don't like to have a central concentration on any one source. You also want to have something that's scalable as well, which is why we're doing the marketing now, because, you can put money behind it and you can generate that way. But for me, if you're looking at it through a business lens, you want to have a balanced lead flow because it's just going to de-risk, from any hiccups.
When you say partnerships, do you mean referral partners that are from professional services?
Correct. Yeah. So whether that's buyer's agent, accountant, financial planning, for us, they're the professionals that we probably align best with.
Yeah.
But it really depends on, the business you're building and the clients you're talking to.
And what kind of marketing are you doing?
So we've started doing, the organic marketing and putting out, discussions on things that we're doing with clients. So, we're
like
running through
studies.
deals. Yeah, little case studies, but also, just doing some thought leadership and whatnot. It's stuff that I probably should have done at the start of my journey. If I was to have my time again, I would absolutely, start building a brand from day one. But, now I've sort of taken a view of that we're doing so much really great work internally in the business. We need to start, putting that out there.
Yeah.
And it's been really well received and, we're getting some great traction with it. So it's a focus, for now.
And you've got an external person doing that. You haven't hired in-house to get someone to do it.
So we've got an in-house associate who's really looking to work with our external partners. But no, we've got an agency sort of helps with, the organic. We've got an agency that helps with the paid. We know we're working with agencies to do a whole bunch of things. So I think, again, it's about if you want to do something, pay for the service, like align with somebody who is an expert in what they do, and just make sure you collaboratively build out the strategy.
We get often asked whenever we do our sort of broker events, people saying like, should I pay for marketing? How do you even look at return on investment when it's marketing? How do you guys do it? Do you kind of track that? Is it too early to say?
Look, it's probably a little bit early to say. We only started the paid strategy about 2 months ago, and with our business, there's generally a 3-month lead time. But you want to follow sort of the basic marketing metrics. So what's your cost per lead? What's your cost per appointment? What's your cost per settlement? So once you really understand what those metrics are, you can understand, okay, well, is the creative that I'm building working? Do I need to put more money or less money? Are my ads hitting as well? So it's not just, I guess, the creative, it's, do you have a compelling offer? So for me, this is a learning journey that I'm going through. I've got some great mates in different industries that I'm learning from as well. But it's something that, in this day and age, I think you need to put a lot of time into.
Yeah, awesome. And of course, now with 78% market share, there are lots of brokers that people can choose from nowadays.
Absolutely.
And obviously using brokers a lot of the time. So kind of standing out from the crowd is super important. We're actually talking a lot about that in the Better Business Summit this year. We're talking a lot about how you can stand out for the crowd, how you can use AI to kind of help you not only sort of get your platform out there, but how you can actually get AI to understand that you're the person they should be serving up as well. It's pretty interesting. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I'd love to pick your brain about what you're actually seeing in market at the moment. So like what kind of trends are you seeing when people are coming to you for finance help? What sort of challenges are you seeing in the market at the moment as well? And your top advice for new brokers. And we'll get into that just after this. So Matt, I think it's always really interesting seeing how quickly things change in the economy and how quickly trends change. I mean, like only a few years back, obviously, when we had low rates, lots of people were fixing. Now we're like 90% variable. We had a huge first home buyer glut come through. Now we're a really, really peak investor, I think. So I think highest investor lending since 2017. And seeing like lots of things obviously going on economically and globally that are really impacting what's happening in the lending space here in Australia. What kind of trends are you seeing at the moment? What's sort of the most common thing people are coming to you for?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the investor movement. So we've had, a bullish 10-year period. So there's a lot of investors that have been in the game for a long time who've done really well. And what we're seeing is those resi investors wanting to expand their portfolio, but also look to move into different asset classes like commercial. So I think commercial has become a lot more popular of late. I think there's a lot more information around commercial and its benefits, but there's also risks to it as well. So it's really something for the right investor at the right time. But we're working with a lot of investors who are looking to really pivot or graduate from resi into commercial, with that commercial being, I guess, the exit strategy and the income generation for those that have already built some substantial wealth through property.
Yeah.
So definitely commercial is something we're seeing. Self-managed super is something we continue to see as well. Again, self-managed super, took a bit of a dive post 2017, when a lot of the big banks pulled it out of their product offering and it went to non-banks, but now we're seeing it potentially come back into the bigger banks as well. So I think that's really exciting. What else am I saying?
I don't know, you tell me.
What else am I saying?
You see any self-employed or any, are you doing any deposit scheme guarantee things?
I might talk about trusts.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. The SMSF stuff's really interesting. And yeah, we saw AMP recently come back into market. I think one of the first banks in a long time to re-enter SMSF space. But there's been a lot of focus on SMSF lending and trust lending as a whole. Are you seeing that kind of resurgence of trust lending too?
Yeah, so trusts are the flavour of the month at the moment. So it's interesting to see what the big banks have done and the restrictions that they've put on that type of lending. But again, I think it's cyclical. It's going to be similar to what we have seen with self-managed super, where it's going to move to the non-banks and they're really going to take up the lion's share. I don't see it completely going away. Company and trust lending is really a foundational part of the environment, especially for commercial banks. Again, it's about asset protection and whatnot. And yes, there's ways in which you can expand your portfolios using trusts more so than doing it in your personal name. But I don't see it fully leaving the lending environment. I think it's just something that we're going to have to use more banks to be able to deliver options for our clients where it makes sense. I probably see the major banks coming into the fold in a couple of years' time when they work out that their volumes have gone somewhere else.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to say that we actually just launched an ebook on our sister title Broker Daily called Who Can You Trust, which is literally looking at the different lenders and particularly the non-banks who are playing in this space and what sort of things they're seeing, because it's been so difficult almost to keep track, even from us on a news perspective. I feel like every other day we're writing about someone tweaking their trust policy or changing how they relate lending to company trust, for example. So yeah, lots of different changes going on there, lots of confusion. So we thought we'd do an ebook on Broker Daily, just being like, what are other people doing? Where are the people actually still lending, and what sort of things are they servicing? So do check that out if you're interested in that. The other thing that I'm interested to know, Matt, from you is what are your kind of challenges as a broker? What's the hardest part about being a broker owner?
Being a broker owner, I guess it's probably wearing the two hats. It's having the business hat on enough and not just wearing the broker hat, because when you wear that broker hat, you can just be pulled into the deals, and you sometimes don't step out as much as you should to really focus on, okay, what do we need to do to move the business forward, not just this deal forward.
Yeah.
So I think what has definitely helped is, again, hiring. Gavin's been great for the business to be able to make sure that, the deals in train are moving.
On your gav, yeah.
On your gav. Gav's great. But it's giving me that ability to sort of take a step back and go, okay, where do we want to take the brand? We're bringing brokers in now. What type of brokers do we want to bring in, and how can we support them to, be top 100 brokers, in a really short period of time? Like that's our focus. So we don't want to be the biggest company out there. We do just want to be the best. We want our people to, earn a great living while they're working with us and be really fulfilled in what they do. And I think I was able to get that clarity and sort of have those strategic conversations with, my advisors, my coaches, all that kind of thing, to work out the way forward.
It's interesting that you talk about coaches there. And I think, again, this is something that a lot of brokers, particularly as we kind of have got bigger and professionalized, have been like, I actually need some help here on building a brokerage, not just on writing the deals. Who's your coach? Who have you used, and how and why did you bring them on?
Yeah, so I've worked with some great people over the years, so it's not just one. So I've done a lot of courses. I worked with Jason Back for a year. He's fantastic. I recently worked with Sam Panetta for about 6 months, and he was fantastic. And for recently with Sammy, he was just like, mate, marketing is your Achilles heel. You need to sort it out. Go spend the money you're paying to me on marketing, and that's what we did. And he's still a great confidant and mentor that I talk to.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably understanding what are your deficiencies, and if you can't work that out yourself, you need to go and talk to somebody. So I'm big on personal development. I think if you're looking to, build a brokerage, or you're a new broker, reaching out and building those networks, both with your aggregators and externally, or potentially with coaching groups, a really great way to fast track your learning. Don't look at it as a cost. Yes, it's a cost, but it's an investment.
Investment in yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And obviously, being a small business owner can be quite stressful a lot of times. You said at the beginning you were kind of working 7 days a week, and it can be really take its toll both on you sort of personally, but also, outside of your kind of own personal sphere, like on your family and your friends. If you've kind of got young kids, it can be hard being away from them for so long. I wonder how you kind of put in place, or have you even put in place any kind of guardrails to ensure you're not burning out?
Yeah, I think probably it's just setting a structure. I'm very routine orientated. So for me, I get up early. I like to go to the gym or go for a run. So I'm very sort of focused with that structure in the morning. So that just sets me up. And if I don't do that, I definitely feel it throughout the day. But that sort of gives me the personal release, to be able to be like, okay, I've done what I need to do for myself. I'm feeling good. I'm eating well. I can focus the rest of my energy on work. So that's really what sets me up for the day. In terms of hobbies, I like sort of playing six-a-side soccer where I can. I like racing cars where I can as well, going to Eastern Creek. That's always a lot of fun. And some boxing as well, which is always fun. So
and you mentioned golf earlier too.
Yeah, I don't play too much golf anymore. So it's kind of one of those hobbies that's sort of been shelved. But where I can.
Yeah. And I think that's a great sort of, piece of advice there as well, because so often, people really struggle at being like, I know I should do it, but I haven't either got time or like, I just don't know where to start. Like a lot of the time too, if you've never run a business before, you're like, I don't know what I don't know. So having someone who has done that before and worked with other people to do it can be really helpful. When it comes to actually though, like things you'd like to see improved in broking. Now there's been lots of different answers to this question, but I'm always really curious to be like, if you were king of the broking industry for a day, what would you change?
What would I change? How could I not be too controversial?
Oh, be controversial.
Okay. I think if I was to change something, I would probably like to see better relationships with the broking industry and bigger banks. And while I don't think they're bad, channel conflict still exists. And when you're contributing 80% of Australia's mortgage flow, I would like to think that, better relationships and better engagement could exist, and less channel conflict, could come through. So, and again, it's probably, is just part of the business. But, it is frustrating as a broker to do a lot of work where we, try not to charge the clients, where it makes sense. We don't charge a fee for our resi side of our business. But, there are still things that pop up, and there's some banks that, deal with it, really well and really openly. But I'd like to see that adopted across the board.
Are there any products or loan? Are there any loan products that you would like to see developed? Like maybe are there any gaps in market where you're like, what's missing? I would love a product that does X, Y, Z.
Look, probably more LMI, paid by the month products,
Yep.
as opposed to being paid up front, and also ensuring that if you are insured via a provider, that's transferable across other banks. So, we've got some banks that self-insure, we've got some banks that, have that external. And I just don't think it's fair that, you pay the same fee if you needed to refinance. Not that, you probably would want to move a client, but if you were to refinance to another bank over 80% LVR, you've got to pay that full whack of insurance again. So I just don't think that's fair. I think that's only serving one person in that transaction. And I just think it would make more sense to have more operators provide a month by month payment or make it transferable.
There you go. Any LMI providers out there listening, a little business idea for you. And I also want to ask you about, sort of your plans for the future. And you mentioned already about bringing in new team members, and quite a few team members this year. Is there anything else that you'd like to do to grow your business, or are you kind of like, we're big enough now?
No, look, I think we definitely want to grow, but it's the right kind of growth, and it's growing with the right people. So like I said before, we don't want to be the biggest. We just really want to be the best in terms of quality, in terms of volume, in terms of efficiency. We want to get to a point where if a bank's working with an Evoke Capital broker, they know that the submission going through is going to be of a top standard. So for me, that's our focus. It's replicating what I feel we're doing already, with the new blood that we're bringing in and supporting them to be the best that they can be.
Yeah, awesome. And then if you had any advice for brokers listening to this, who maybe are at the beginning of their journey or thinking about growing their business, but are like, I don't know how to do it. What advice would you give them? Or what advice would you give yourself if you could go back?
What advice I would give myself is to start branding and marketing from day one. Don't get caught up with being busy. Everybody's busy. There's always 100 things to do, but carve out time. Time block's the biggest hack, you can do in terms of mapping out your day and sticking to those big rocks that you need to deliver upon. So outside of marketing, it's probably just networking. Like when I started in COVID, I couldn't network. So I was jumping on the online BNIs, I was jumping on the online sort of BX forums. And, while they didn't probably provide the return on time investment, historically looking, I did meet some great people that I'm still friends with today, and we're doing business. So for me, it's about networking. It's about reaching out to other brokers, and asking the questions. We're all, experiencing similar problems. Talk to people and understand what they're doing well and potentially what's impacting their business. And
any advice you give to like your new brokers?
Advice to my new brokers. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up. But, just do the basics right. Just be on time, always return phone calls, always return emails within, the right time frames. It's just, there's probably not enough people out there doing the basics. If we look at, what we get frustrated with the bank at sometimes, it's timeliness, it's responsiveness. Like they should be come to work things for brokers. So just wow your clients on service, deliver a great solution, and you're going to have success.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much for joining me on Elite Broker and sharing your story. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you've got any questions for me or for Matt, then do feel free to reach out. You can reach me at editor@theadvisor.com.au and Matt Spears at Evoke Capital. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions. And, he's recruiting, it turns out. So if you're looking for a job, he's the man, apparently, to talk to. And of course, if you are interested in finding out more about how you can scale your brokerage business, then do make sure you come along to the Better Business Summit 2026, one in partnership with our principal partner, NAB, which is taking place over March and April, going around the country, hearing from some amazing speakers this year about how you can actually grow a team of operational excellence, including the Chief Operations Officer of Sydney Swans. In Sydney, we're hearing from the former head of operations for F1 team Red Bull about what they did to kind of run elite teams at peak performance. We're also talking to Smart Move Managing Director Darren Little about how they built Smart Move into a major brokerage now with over 100 brokers. We're talking to Maxine Horn, the Shark Tank and also business owner in her own right. She built the Vita Group, plus loads of amazing partners talking about their tools and technology they're offering brokers too. So do make sure you come along to Better Business Summit, which of course is followed by the Better Business Awards. And we can't wait to crown the 2026 winners. If you want to find out anything more about the Better Business Summit or Better Business Awards, do head over to the website, betterbusinesssummit.com.au, betterbusinessawards.com.au, or just pick up the phone and give me a bell. I'd be happy to tell you about it. And I hope you have a fab week. We'll catch you next time for another episode on the Advisor Podcast Network.